The Toronto Raptors lost out on a top 6 pick at the NBA draft lottery, but what if I told you there was a very realistic trade that could still see them selecting in the top 10 and all it would cost is Jakob Poeltl? Does this trade make sense for the Raptors? Let's get into it. In his time with the Toronto Raptors, it has never really been Masai Ujiri's MO to be patient and calculated with a rebuild. Oftentimes, it's aggressive in trying to push the team forward and continue to try and make the team better immediately without having to really wait a long time to do it. And for the current state of the Raptors, with some rumblings about a rebrand coming up from the Maple Leaf Sports Entertainment Group, the ownership group of the Toronto Raptors, there could be some pressing times ahead for Toronto to get things right on the court after an extraordinarily disappointing season where they finished with only 25 wins and had the 6th worst record in the entire NBA. So for the front office group, there could be an opportunity at the draft to vault this team forward by making a massive trade for some youthful presence to kind of help with the Raptors on their timeline for players like Scottie Barnes, Emmanuel Quickley, RJ Barrett, perhaps as well, Grady Dick, to really supplement this core going forward and try and see where they can go with this retool and to accelerate the retool along the way. So the trade in question here is going to be involving the Memphis Grizzlies with the 9th overall pick in the upcoming draft. So for the Memphis Grizzlies, one area they really need to address is the center position, and they really want to get themselves back into that contention they were a couple years ago after a disastrous injury-riddled 2023-2024 season. But the type of center that they would be looking for with the 9th overall spot is Donovan Clingan out of UConn, and it's just not very apparent that he's going to be available, honestly, anywhere near the 9th overall position. So the right course of action for the Memphis Grizzlies could be to trade up in the draft to try and select a player like Donovan Clingan, but also it could be trading out of the draft altogether and making a deal with the Toronto Raptors to sort out the center position by bringing in a player like, let's say, Jakob Poeltl. Jakob Poeltl could be sent over to the Memphis Grizzlies, and in return, the Raptors could receive that 9th overall pick. On top of that, they could also get a very good rotational big in Brandon Clarke, who just happens to be Canadian. That's not the reason that I want to trade for him. I really do like Brandon Clarke as a player, and also in the deal, the Raptors could pick up Ziaire Williams. It hasn't really worked out for him so far in the NBA with the Grizzlies, but maybe there is some untapped potential there that the Toronto Raptors would want to work with. And I'll tell you why this trade actually makes sense for both teams right after this, because I want to remind you guys, this is Amateur Sports, the YouTube channel dedicated to Toronto Raptors content in live streams and in videos just like this. Drop a like if you enjoyed this one along the way, and subscribe to the channel to help us on the road to 18,000 subs. Tons of great content coming for the draft and for the start of free agency. You do not want to miss out. So for the Memphis Grizzlies, again, why this does make sense is that the team kind of just needs a center. There still are a lot of good pieces in place. Ja Morant is going to be coming back from injury. Desmond Bane took a real step last season, and bringing in a center to replace the kind of void that Steven Adams left when he got injured and eventually got traded away to the Houston Rockets. It gives Ja Morant that really good pick and roll partner. It gives them that rim protection that allows Jaren Jackson Jr. to spread out and play more so as a 4. Playing as a power forward with an actual rim protector in place is the style of play that got Jaren Jackson Jr. a Defensive Player of the Year award last year. And without Ja Morant and a lot of players due to injuries last season, Jaren Jackson Jr. actually took on a pretty big self-creation leap last season, which could also see him a much more formidable force at the 4 on the offensive end of the floor as well. So the fit here makes perfect sense. The Grizzlies probably won't be able to address this position at the draft, nor so will they find any piece that will have a more integral role with the team for the upcoming season rather than Jakob Poeltl. So I think the Memphis Grizzlies would jump at the opportunity here to move for a player like Jakob Poeltl. They wouldn't really want to lose a player like Brandon Clarke, but they can afford to give a player that perhaps is coming off of their bench, and Ziaire Williams, they wouldn't really have any reservations about losing him in the deal. But why does this trade also make sense for the Raptors, and why does it make sense for me, Jacob here at Amateur Sports? Because this trade really goes against everything that I've been wanting the Raptors to do ahead of the draft. I have been pretty adamant that I want to hold on to Jakob Poeltl, and I have been pretty adamant that I also want the Raptors to kind of hold what they have for the draft, because I'm not sure any trade really makes sense for the Raptors to jump up in the draft. Well, in this situation, the Raptors aren't jumping up in the draft. They are holding their 19th overall pick, and they are holding their 31st overall pick. Now they're just getting the addition of the 9th overall pick in the draft. And why I like this trade from a draft standpoint is that I think that there are a good mix of centers available to the Raptors at 19th overall, which would do a decent job and maybe not quite replacing Jakob Poeltl, but being able to do a job for the Raptors. I feel a bit more confident in the center pool now than I was a few weeks ago, first of all. And also, if the Raptors do have the 9th overall pick, they can address another one of the holes in the roster. I've been more so concerned about the lack of a big wing defender, and especially the lack of a point guard other than Immanuel Quickley on the Toronto Raptors roster, but that can be addressed with the 9th overall pick. And trading away Poeltl, I've been just worried the Raptors won't have a center and won't really be able to address that while still feeling the need for, again, the point guard, which is a much more pressing need for this organization. But the Raptors can address the point guard or the big wing defender with the 9th overall pick. And I'll give you a couple of names in just a second here of who they could select with that pick. And with the 19th overall pick, there should be a center. Zach Edey might be available at 19th. I'm not as big on him as I am on a guy like Khalil Ware, who could be available at the 19th overall spot. Yves Missi, Deron Holmes, lots of good players in the center spot could be available to the Raptors with that 19th overall pick to just immediately try and replace what Jakob Poeltl brought to the team. Now, again, I've been pretty dead against trading Jakob Poeltl, but in a situation like this, like, you are really getting a ton of value here. Not only are you getting that 9th overall pick, I think Brandon Clarke is an excellent rotation piece. He's been coming off the bench for the last few years for the Grizzlies, scoring above 10 points per game, and he's locked in on a fantastic contract. He's making basically mid-level exception money. He's making $12.5 million a season for the next 3 seasons. Yes, he's coming off of a pretty significant injury, but he wasn't a guy that relied super heavily on athleticism. He's a bit of an undersized big. He's a 4, but can play a bit as a stretch 5 and just provide you some great hustle minutes off the bench. Would fit really well, I think, in with this Raptors unit, and it doesn't hurt that he's Canadian as well. I mean, there's a lot of great qualities. I don't consider nationality when wanting to trade for a player, but it's certainly a little bit of the cherry on top, a little bit of a bonus here that he happens to be Canadian as well and could kind of fit in with this Raptors group. So I really like what Brandon Clarke brings. Zaire Williams is a throw-in that, hey, maybe there's some untapped potential the Raptors kind of go with. But for that 9th overall spot, there's an opportunity here. I think that Rob Dillingham slips to 9th overall. Nikola Topic as well could fall to 9th overall and probably should fall to 9th overall. That would immediately address the point guard concerns that I've had. Rob Dillingham brings a lot of shot making, maybe not quite the size or fit next to Immanuel Quickley. So a guy like Nikola Topic brings some excellent ball handling, which could kind of give you more of an excuse to play Immanuel Quickley at the 2 because Topic has such good size for a point guard and really silky handler, smooth operator. Or you could go with a big wing defender like Ron Holland, who kind of addresses that sort of need for a switchable player that the Raptors have coveted in the past. Who knows who else could be available there? Maybe Cody Williams could be available there. Maybe Devin Carter is still available at 9th overall. There are a whole host of options to plug an immediate hole with a team at 9th overall, and there is still the possibility of addressing the need for a center with that 19th overall pick. So there's so much that makes sense here for the Raptors and so much that makes sense for the Memphis Grizzlies that I would definitely pull the trigger on a trade like this, and I don't really see why the Memphis Grizzlies wouldn't either. Any Memphis Grizzlies fans watching, you let me know if I'm completely off base with this, but I think this really solves what the Memphis Grizzlies have as a problem this season to try and be a really good team next season while they still can be a really good team next season. One area where the Raptors will have to address, which shouldn't necessarily be a problem, is they don't want to bring in 3 prospects this summer. Like I said, they'd get the 9th overall pick here. They have the 19th overall pick, but they also have the 31st overall pick. Masai Ujiri and Darko have separately made it pretty clear that they don't want 3 rookies coming in to develop at the same time. They want to put their full focus into 2 different players, but I don't think it's going to be that big of a problem at all to trade that 31st overall pick. It's the first pick of the second night of the NBA draft. The Raptors are going to have the whole night and the whole day the next day to try and work out a trade here because I really feel like somebody will see a player who didn't go in the first round and think, wow, he's still on the board here. Let's go and nab him right away at 31st overall and not give any other team a chance, and they could trade for that Raptors pick. The Raptors could get some additional assets. Who knows what they could get on top of that 31st pick. And I think this just sets up the Raptors a lot better for success in the future. I'm completely comfortable hanging on to Jakob Poeltl unless the trade makes just too much sense. And that's what we have with this situation here. I really love the trade that I've outlined here for the Raptors to move up or just move into the lottery with the 9th overall pick, not costing them any draft capital to do it at that. You'll have to really convince me off of my stance in the comments of why you wouldn't like this trade. So do this, that. If you disagree with this trade, give me your thoughts and opinions in the comments down below. If you agree, you can also let me know and say, hey, I really like this as well. If you did enjoy this video, make sure you do hit the like button. Also, because the draft is next week, I'm doing tons of videos, tons of streams for it, because free agency is the end of next week as well. Tons of streams, tons of videos about that. You should be subscribed to Amateur Sports, and I'll see you again next time for another video or perhaps a stream as well.